gremlins! I generated 3 random color palettes this week using the website Coolers, which I've linked in the description in case you want to try this for yourself. My goal was to create 3 characters who are linked in some way, using only a 5 color palette to inspire each character. Usually when I turn something into characters, each character exists in a vacuum, but today I wanted to do some more world building, figure out the characters' relationships to each other, and maybe add some elements that could become a story in the future. I screenshotted the first 3 color palettes to generate, then began brainstorming ideas for characters I could draw with these colors. When I came up with this idea, I assumed I'd use the color palettes for the characters' clothing and maybe their hair, but still use outside colors for their skin, etc. However, I decided instead to limit the entire character to those 5 colors, plus a few shades of those colors. That means I only have 1 color palette that includes a human skin tone, and that led me to create a world for these characters where non-human fantasy races exist. Before I started my individual drawings, I made a quick sketch of all 3 characters together to figure out each character's species, design, and start brainstorming how they all know each other. I've decided that these 3 are friends and possibly roommates in university, in an urban fantasy world that is the same as our world, except that magic and a diverse number of fantasy races and creatures exist openly. This friend group includes an angel, a half merperson, half human, and a full human. I didn't come up with names for these characters until just now as I write the script, so if you have better ideas for names, let me know in the comments. However, I've decided the angel is named Arianna, the half merperson is named Fenn, and the human is named Samantha, but goes by Sammy. In my quick thumbnail sketch, well, I say quick, but it still took over an hour, Arianna is sitting on a railing. Fenn is leaning against the same railing, info-dumping about their most recent environmental science lecture, and Sammy is stimming by practicing small amounts of lightning magic. While making this sketch, I decided that Arianna is studying to be a game designer, Fenn is doing an environmental science major, and Sammy is majoring in wizardry with a minor in magical history. I also decided that Sammy uses magical tattoos to channel her magic, helping her cast more magic without exhaustion and focus on her spells. Fenn uses a cane or crutches on land, since they're unsteady on their feet and deal with leg pain due to being adapted to aquatic living. Fenn is also non-binary and uses they-them pronouns. Sammy has ADHD and Arianna is autistic, and Fenn is almost definitely neurodivergent in some way. Due to having a lot of eyes, Arianna has an even harder time avoiding eye contact without being noticed. I started my individual drawings of each character with Arianna. I decided right away that I wanted her to be posed mid-flight, wings spread and legs out ready to land or having just taken off. I then spent quite a while fiddling with her pose to make it seem like she was flying free through the air. As well as struggling a bit with her pose, her face was also difficult due to how many eyes she has. The rest of the sketch went well, especially since I'd already figured out her design and outfit before I started. Arianna is wearing headphones while she flies, to block out the sound of the wind, which can cause overwhelm on a bad day. She also likes to listen to music while she flies. The combination of flight and loud music is really calming to her. I think she likes a lot of heavy metal and punk music, partly because I like the contrast between her pastel clothing and angelic wings and her music taste, and partly because I like metal and punk music and I relate a lot to Arianna. I also found that punk and metal music is really good to stim to, and that would be a benefit Arianna would also enjoy. Arianna's outfit is simple and comfortable, and she wears a version of this exact outfit almost every day. She has on Converse shoes, ripped light-wash jeans, and a slightly baggy graphic t-shirt over a long sleeve. This particular t-shirt has a graphic of a Dungeons & Dragons D20 on it. I think among this friend group, Arianna has been playing D&D since high school, and introduced her roommates to the game in the first week of university. Now all 3 are part of a D&D group, along with a couple other nerds from their classes, and Arianna is the dungeon master. One problem I encountered in every single drawing for this video was avoiding having the same color too close to each other in the design. Using only 5 colors makes it hard to avoid accidental overlaps where multiple elements of the design are the same color. I got around this a bit by allowing myself to use colors a few shades lighter or darker than my base color palette, but I still had to use the colors carefully. It doesn't help that in every color palette I ended up with at least 2 colors that are already really close in hue or shade. For example, Arianna's color palette has 2 pastel yellows. I used one of those yellows for her t-shirt and the canvas of her Converse, and the other yellow, slightly lightened, for her shoes' soles and laces and for her feathery wings. I used the base shade of blue for her jeans, but slightly darker versions of that blue for her curly hair and the D20 on her shirt. I used the same shade of pink for her long sleeve and for her headphones, and I reserved the purple, the darker shade I had to work with, for Arianna's skin. Her eyes are golden. Despite the difficulties using such a limited color palette, it does make her character look really cohesive, and also like she's part of an animated show where each character has a set limited palette for design purposes. Just as sketching Arianna's face was made difficult by her many eyes, shading it was also difficult. I had to figure out where her brows would be, and also shade 8 different eyelids, and try my best to figure out how the shadows would fall on a face like this. The rest of her skin, on her hands and legs, was much easier. After shading Arianna's skin, I began to shade her hair, first blocking in where highlights and shadows would be, then using a different brush to add a lot of texture to her tight coils. I used a muted purple for the shadow layer on all 3 characters to make them look cohesive. I had to make the shadows lighter on this drawing because Arianna has such a pastel color palette that dark shadows were too much of a contrast. The shading of Arianna's clothing wrinkles went especially well. I didn't design a fancy background for any of these characters. For Arianna, I tried making a slightly fancy patterned background using her color palette, but it didn't work out the way I hoped. So instead, I just designed a simple gradient of all 5 colors for the background. And here is Arianna's final design. I really like her look. She looks nerdy and friendly, her headphones indicate her sensory sensitivity, and I love the pose of her flying with wings spread and how happy being in the air makes her. The second character I drew was Fenn, who was also the hardest character for me to design in the sketch. I thought Fenn would be easy because their color palette is entirely green, and green is basically my specialty, but trying to make a scaly fish person was tricky. Fenn's pose is the least interesting of the 3 characters. I posed them leaning on their crutch and showing off their webbed fingers by waving their free hand. They have very large eyes, fins on the side of their head in place of ears, and their teeth are sharp and pointy. They have no hair and their skin is scaly and a pale bluish green. Their eyes are huge to see in murky water since they're adapted to live in deep lakes. Because of this, their eyes are very light sensitive, so they wear sunglasses most of the time when outside, and even sometimes indoors when the lights are too bright. For this drawing, their sunglasses are folded up and tucked into the collar of their hoodie so they don't cover up Fenn's face, but outside of posing for a photo, Fenn would put the sunglasses right back on. Fenn is wearing a cropped hoodie over a fishnet long sleeve and baggy cargo pants. They cropped the hoodie themselves, so the hem is a little rough and fraying. The hoodie has a graphic of lily pads on the chest, a graphic that Fenn painted on it themselves to make the hoodie more theirs. The cargo pants have many pockets, and at all times, those pockets are filled with the most random assortment of trinkets. Fenn loves shiny things. Often they'll completely stop walking to pick up a bottle cap or bottle tab, and they have a collection of emotional support river rocks that they carry with them everywhere. Fenn is also the friend who always has band-aids, ibuprofen, hand sanitizer, and a pen when anyone around them needs it. And before you ask, yes, this is entirely based on myself, and my backpack full of emergency supplies that I've needed like 5 times. Finally, Fenn has hiking boots on, good for ankle support and very comfortable, since walking is already painful for them. I'm really proud of the design of those hiking boots. No one in this friend group is neurotypical. Fenn is the only one in the group not officially diagnosed, but they have been peer-reviewed to have anxiety and probably autism. With Arianna and Sammy, they won't shut up, but around other people, Fenn tends to stay quiet and just watch and listen, often tapping their fingers on the handle of their cane or fiddling with the strings on their hoodie. The one exception is when someone brings up environmental issues, especially surrounding freshwater habitats. It doesn't matter who Fenn is around then, nothing will dissuade the incoming rant. I was working only with shades of green for this image. My color palette included 3 shades of bluish green, a bright forest green, and a dark green that's almost brown. I used that brown green for Fenn's belt, boots, and crutch, turning that one brown into several variations. Their cargo pants are bright green, as are the lily pads on their hoodie. The hoodie itself is the darker shade of blue-green. Fenn's fins are the mid-tone shade of blue-green, and their skin is the lighter shade. Also, it wasn't until I was coloring Fenn's skin that I realized I'd forgotten to draw the fishnets from my sketch into line art. I did the same basic shading on Fenn's skin that I always do, but when those shadows had been blended out, I went back and added highlights in splotches to hopefully look like scales shining in the light. Again, I used a muted purple as my shadow color, and I think I got the cargo pants and hoodie sleeve wrinkles shaded decently well. I think this muted purple works really well as a shadow color over multiple base colors, and I might start using purple as my shading color in most drawings, rather than changing the shadow color depending on the character. For Fenn's drawing, I didn't even try making a fancy pattern background. I just went straight to the gradient of 5 colors, and it worked great. I'm pretty happy with Fenn's design. I love the personality I gave them, and I think their outfit is cool, if a bit unusual. I also think the design of their half-mer characteristics worked better than I thought it would when I started, even if this is a fantasy design I haven't tried to draw before. Finally, we come to Sammy's drawing. Whew. Right away, you can see that I already have a sketch here. That's because I was actually 10 minutes away from being completely done with this drawing, sketch, line art, colors, and shading, when my recording failed. I lost 2 and a bit hours of video. So after rage quitting, having a full mental breakdown, and sobbing on the floor for about 15 minutes, and giving the entire project a break for 2 days, I started over. However, I couldn't bear to start completely from scratch. I was so happy with the character design I'd sketched, so I decided to just redo this drawing from the line art onwards and keep my original sketch. Also, as a bonus, if you stick around to the end of the video, you can see my first version of this art piece, as well as a couple of bonus sketches with all 3 characters hanging out together. Sammy is human, a magic user studying wizardry on a university level. She also has ADHD and struggles to focus on spells, so as an aid, she's in the process of getting her entire body covered in magical tattoos. Each tattoo corresponds to an elemental power, the type of magic Sammy is specializing in. Those tattoos act as the spell component of her casting, so she doesn't have to focus on reciting spells in high-stress situations. They also help keep her from draining her magical energy. In this drawing, Sammy is casting 2 spells at once, just for fun. From one hand, she summoned a ball of flames, her other hand is shooting lightning. This also shows off another element of her tattoos. When she's using magic, the corresponding tattoo will glow. In this case, the lightning bolts on one leg and the flames on her other calf are glowing with blue and orange light, while the rest of her tattoos remain their original black. Those other tattoos include a sun on her stomach that would give her access to light magic, vines and flowers on her thigh for plant magic, and a swirl on her ankle half hidden by her boots that gives her wind magic. She's still getting tattoos, and her next one is going to be rock-related, since she's trying to learn earth magic at the moment. Arianna, who likes doing art in her free time, is helping Sammy come up with rock-related designs. While I was drawing the original version of this character, I was also on a call with my best friend and talking about Sammy's tattoos, and I mentioned a tattoo on her shoulder of a heart, which I said would correspond to healing magic. I then got into an argument with said friend, who is a pre-med student, and pointed out that hearts don't actually heal that well, and I should pick a different body part that either contributes more to healing, like white blood cells, or heals well, like a bone. I argued that a heart looks cooler as a tattoo, and decided to stick with it just to annoy my friend. However, when I started the drawing over, I ended up not drawing the heart tattoo, nor any other tattoo corresponding to healing power, since I decided Sammy would be specializing specifically in elemental magic. So hey friend, you need a nickname I can use on this channel. If you're watching this, you're welcome. I used the same method of drawing Sammy's ball of flames as I had on the previous iteration of this drawing, but it was not looking as good as it had the first time. So for the only time in this video, I stole the element I'd drawn essentially off camera and used that instead. The lightning, though, is entirely new. I drew each fork of electricity, then made it glow yellow by copying the layer, then blurring it. I've talked a lot about Sammy's tattoos, since they're my favorite element of her design, but I also do really like the rest of her design. Her hair is long on one side, shaved short on the other, and she has a lot of facial piercings. I went with the character design element of big jacket for her silhouette, which I haven't really tried much before. Her jacket is oversized and thick, and as she wields her magic, it's falling off her shoulder and billowing around her like a cloak. Very dramatic. The jacket is also the only element of her design that has color. Under the jacket, Sammy is wearing a sports bra and short athletic shorts, both of which are black, with some blue accents on her shorts. Her shoes are also black, with a slight pop of color in the form of blue laces. The jacket, however, is entirely color, blocks of bright red and blue with pale pink lining, cuffs, and collar. Sammy is the only character who has a human skin tone as part of her color palette, and so her skin was the easiest to shade since I could use the same colors and methods I normally use on people. I did nearly have the shadows on the wrong side of her face though, since I'm trying to make all these characters lit from the same direction for consistency's sake. Before I got into the shading layer over everything, I added 2 layers of light cast from her 2 sources of magic. The lightning is casting nearly white light on Sammy's right side, and the fire is casting warm orange light on her left. Adding these bright highlights makes Sammy's lightning the most dynamic of the 3. I think it came out looking really cool, especially when I added my shadow layer. The shadows on Sammy look especially dark in contrast to the light of her magic. On her legs especially, the dark shadows make her glowing tattoos pop. I also found the process of shading Sammy's big jacket really fun and satisfying, and I think it looks really cool as a statement piece. I thought I was done with Sammy's design. I added the background gradient and everything, but then I realized I'd forgotten to add highlights to her eyes. These highlights are different to the highlights in her friend's eyes. Her eyes are reflecting her magic, gold on one side and white on the other, and I think they look really cool. You can probably tell by how long I spent talking about Sammy's design, but I'm pretty sure she was my favorite character to draw. I love her pose, her magic, her tattoos, her jacket. Even though I had to draw her twice, which might have soured my thoughts on the drawing, I'm really happy with it. And just to compare, here's the original drawing of Sammy. I really like all 3 characters I designed today. I really like urban fantasy, especially urban fantasy which takes fantasy creatures and slots them into the regular world without them hiding their magic. I'd also love to hear in the comments which of these 3 characters is your favorite. Also, as promised, here are a couple more quick sketches I made of these characters just hanging out and being friends. In the first scene, Sammy rested her head on Fenn's, and then Arianna tried to one-up Sammy by flying up to be tall enough to rest her head on Sammy's. In the second scene, all 3 friends are chilling in Arianna's room in their shared apartment, doing their own thing. Sammy is lying on the floor listening to music, Arianna is lying on the bed on her laptop coding, and Fenn is sitting on the floor leaning on Arianna's bed scrolling through Instagram. I hope you enjoyed these bonus scenes of friends just chilling together. Also, this is my last video of 2024. I'm taking next week off because the holidays are just really busy. Also, when I come back in January, things will be a little bit different, but I'll tell you about how things will change later. Thank you all for supporting me in the last year. I'm having so much fun with this, and I love sharing my art and stories with you all. If you like my content, please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope I see you all again next year. Until then, bye!